Critical looking skills is a term you might not be very familiar with, but you've probably heard the term critical thinking skills, right? So this is actually a really similar premise. The idea is to look at an image or an object and ask yourself questions about it rather than just taking it at face value. We want to really interrogate these images. Here are some of the questions we might ask about an image, but it's important to note that these are not all of the questions, and you won't always want to ask these specific ones or in this order. The first one you might ask, though, is who made the image? Who's responsible for its production? How was the image made? What are the tools that were used? What are the processes? What do you see when you look at the image? That is really the core, one of the core questions, right? And this is where the dissection becomes so important. And then finally, how does the image make you feel? What does it urge you to do, either explicitly or subtly? And does it generate a certain emotional or intellectual response? So we're going to take these one at a time. Who made the image? Sometimes this is incredibly easy to figure out. Sometimes it's right there on the image, often with political posters, and certainly painters, artists sign their work often. So with something like this, which is a banner, a political, an activist banner from a protest, we can see it says "Stop Lynching, Shame of America," and then on the left side, in the lower third of the banner, there's some text that's sort of written sideways. And if we look closely and we rotate it, we see that it says Rebel Arts. So Rebel Arts the Rebel Arts Group was a activist arts group working in the 1930s and 40s in New York City. They produced murals and theatrical performances and published books and pamphlets and made banners to protest civil rights and labor rights. So that's who made it. Makes perfect sense. However, even if we didn't have Rebel Arts Group there written, we could figure out some general information about who made it by looking closely at the image. We know that it's an anti-lynching banner, that it was made in the first half of the 20th century, because the Wolfsonian collection is 1850 to 1950. And we know that it's probably about social activism, because lynching was, of course, a terrible, terrible issue in the United States through the 19th and 20th centuries. We also can see, though, that behind the banner, behind the poster that this fist is holding up, this sign, there is a factory with a water tower and also a smokestack. And so that sort of landscape is not going to be in a rural area. It's going to be in an urban area, and it's much more likely to be in the North or the Midwest rather than the South. So already we figured out that this is an artwork produced by an socially conscious activist organization that is opposed to the mistreatment of workers and of minorities, and that it is mobilizing against lynching, and so it is concerned with civil rights, and it is concerned with workers' rights, and it's in the North or the Midwest. We figured all that out just by looking at the image, even without Rebel Arts Group written on it. Second question: how was the image produced? So all images are made, right? No image just exists in the world without a maker. Sometimes it's really clear. They're drawn, they're painted, there may be a collage, they're photographed, they're digitally generated today. But often, even within those techniques, there is manipulation that takes place. And we're used to thinking about Photoshop in magazines or filters on social media. But it's also important to note that images are manipulated historically as well, for similar reasons, to inspire specific emotional reactions. This is a poster designed for the ATS, which was an auxiliary branch in the British military that women served in during World War II. This happened in both England and in the United States, where women were officially and formally allowed to serve in the military for the first time in these non-combat roles that were meant to help with manpower shortages because of the war. So there was a massive recruitment effort. Suddenly militaries had to recruit women, and they'd never had to do that before. And so here they've used a technique called photo montage, where they've taken two photographs, one of a woman in her ATS uniform and the other of the soldiers below her. And they've combined them at different scales, which emphasizes different things about the image. So when we look at the woman, we see her as an individual, we see her as a strong person, she's marching, she's empowered, she is the focus of the image. She is the you who is wanted. But behind her are the soldiers. And so that we understand, looking at the image, that this strong, powerful central figure is also working in concert with these other people. She's part of a larger organization. It's that balance of the individual and the organization and the service to the military that the poster is trying to make the viewer see and feel and respond to emotionally. And then what do we see? Again, like I said, this is where the bulk of the work goes and where a lot of that dissection happens. This is a very simple poster, and I'm not going to tell you anything about it. We're just going to look at it and take it at face value. And again, we're going to pick a place to start. There's a really central image here, so I'm going to start with that, the image of the light bulb, right? It's a white light bulb. Below it is a red area. And above it is a blue area. So it's red, white, and blue, patriotic American, right? But the red and the blue meet in what feels like a horizon. And at the horizon, there's a house, and there's nothing around the house. So it's rural, right? It's isolated. But the light bulb is connecting to the house via these white lines, these radiating white lines. The house is projecting those white lines out, and the windows are bright as well. So presumably, something about this is about the house being lit. At the bottom, it says the Rural Electrification Administration. So we know that this poster is telling us that this is about a project that brings energy and light to rural environments, and that in doing so, it is somehow connected to patriotism or a national project. And we got all that just from looking at the poster. It is from the Rural Electrification Administration. They very helpfully tell us that, which was a New Deal program instituted by FDR to bring electricity to large swaths of the country that had not yet had it. Really, like large parts of the countryside in rural environments didn't have electricity through the 1930s. And as part of the New Deal to get people working, there were massive infrastructure projects, including bringing electricity to the countryside. And then finally, what does the image urge you to feel or do? This one is a lot more subjective. All of the other ones, we've been really taking the image at face value and reporting what we see, kind of a just the facts ma'am approach. Here's where you really want to ask what you are feeling when you look at it. It's also, though, really important to recognize that what we feel when we look at an image today might not be the same thing that a person felt when they looked at it in the past. Context really matters, social context really matters. So for instance, that poster that I shared early on of the Nazi propaganda, as a person living in the United States in 2021, I look at that poster and it makes me scared and I don't like it, and it makes me feel unsafe. Your average German citizen living in Berlin in 1939, they might feel differently. They might have different associations with the swastika and with that image. And so there is a certain amount of projecting that we have to do. And all of that work we've done until now, identifying who made it, when it's from, how it's made, helps us put ourselves in that position. Having said that, there are also some things that do carry through across time and space. So for instance, this is an advertisement for a charcuterie company, for a preserved meats company. And what I love about it is the fierceness with which this very abstracted man is stabbing a very abstracted piece of meat, like a slice of salami or something. It's really intense. He's kind of having fun with it. And personally, I look at this and it makes me hungry. I'm a vegetarian and I look at this and I think, ooh, I wouldn't mind a slice of salami. And that's really the goal of this image, is to make you feel like this is a cool company. It's a company that you would want to eat the food that they produce, and maybe you should go out and get some now. So that's the end of this introduction. And in our next lesson, we are going to focus on a single image and unpack it using all of these techniques. But until then, you should feel free to go out and try some of these skills and techniques on images that you see around you, whether on billboards, on buildings, in magazines, online, on social media. Just see what you are able to figure out from asking yourself questions and taking the image apart. The more you practice these critical looking skills, the easier it will be to apply them to the world around you, and the more you'll come to understand about the way that those images inform the people that you live around, the world that you live in, and yourself. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.